Ladies and gentlemen, ATDF everything in that shelf presentation. You're now rocking with TDF everything. Spoiled rotten.
Spoiler alert.
Welcome back, everybody.
Hey.
It's me, Daniel,
And it's been
on Spoiled Rotten.
on that shelf.
Boom. We're doing
did it.
V for Vendetta. There's lots of booms in that.
That's
fun.
right.
That's a good one, right?
It's a boomerific one. Yeah, this movie, the first thing I want to say to it is, wow, how much do you, I just see this future as ours now. Yeah, everything that they do.
The
in
way the movie's made, it doesn't look like it's our future. It looks like it's white people's future. But yeah,
I meant more generally speaking as a society, but
Yes.
it's a white thing for sure. Very, very white.
I think what my main takeaway from this movie is there are a lot of good ideas.
Yes.
I don't know if it all comes together for me.
Right.
I think, and I feel like there is room for people to be like, no, this is just a well-made movie. I think where I'm at personally, a big thing I'll always bump up against. I did it with that movie. I mean, who knows when this episode comes out, but around this time is when I'm thinking of Ending Things came out, and I can't find a review for that movie that's less than an 8.5. Most of them are 100. I just don't know how people are still getting away with completely white casts,
right?
Especially in movies. For that movie, there was no need for it to be all white. And yes, there is, I think, a South Asian woman in the audience at the end of the movie of that.
There was also a gay black man in one of the things, but the point is that they don't have speaking roles, and that they're
sorry. Is there a gay black person in V for Vendetta?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
It's during the raid scenes where she's reading the toilet paper.
Right, so he doesn't speak. Okay, fair enough. There we go. That's
they just show them in bed, they're cuddling, and then the police come and violently show the abuse of the black man, but the white guy camera off that entirely whatsoever. So it was. So
okay,
there
good.
is people of color, but it's like, let's try to mask it as much as possible, so to speak.
But yeah, for this movie, I felt like it's the reality is, there is the moment where the death of someone causes this big outrage. Like we're way at the end of the movie now, but like that build up of like you see a cop kill a kid, and that is the outrage that gets everyone to like wake up and be like, we're not going to take it anymore. And then the army basically comes in. We've seen that play out. Like the movie shows footage of it. So obviously this is not a new phenomenon, but it is like the time we're recording this is a couple months after, but still we've already seen this in action. The main difference obviously being this was injustice towards black people that kind of got people to wake up.
And of course, we are talking about the George Floyd, as well as many.
Yeah, George Floyd, Jacob Blake,
Breonna Taylor. We're talking about all those people, even Canadians as Sammy Yatim, and all those situations. It is something that's going to come up very, very much in this.
And so, I mean, my thing is, yes, good ideas, but to sanitize it to just be white people, I feel like takes away some of the potency of what is actually happening, which is the reason there can be a comfortable middle class, like what they were showing all those white people, is because all of the atrocities are happening every day to the people of color or the marginalized people. And yes, they do touch on that with the gay people that were locked up.
Yes.
So yes, but like it seemed like they were saying, but that was back then, and it seems like the movie misses the point that like there always needs to be an underclass that's being beat up,
right,
in order for other people to feel safe. To be like, well, yeah, that's happening to them, it's not happening to me. And so I thought that's kind of where this movie misses a step. Is that even if you don't want to have Black people or South Asian people or East Asian people in the movie.
Mhm.
I didn't see that point where there was even like poor people still getting roughed up. It just looked like everyone was just calmly like, yeah, this is our life, we get lied to, whatever.
Yeah,
And I'm like,
this
but
is
you don't
yeah.
have room for that if there isn't like the safety net of like, but all of that shit is happening to those people, the other.
Yeah, because the movie is very interesting in the sense where I accepted the lack of race as an extreme kind of movement towards anti-immigration kind of stuff, deportation. Well, obviously the movie does not go into that, but that's the world. I just kind of like, that's an extra layer I put on the movie to be like, this is why it's so white. This is why it's so like
And
that's.
as I said, that's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. If you don't want to explain it, you don't have to.
Yeah.
The movie got you there, but I'm saying there still needs to be the underclass.
Yes,
There
for sure.
was no, it was just everyone was like, yeah, whatever. Like,
Yep.
while watching and having people be like, but that's not true. That's not what happened. And like, everyone's questioning it. But I feel like the whole point that I'm trying to make is that happens. People can, sit on the fence or just be completely apathetic when subconsciously they know that will only ever affect someone else.
Mhm.
Whereas this movie makes it seem like they're all that danger of that. So it's weird.
It's
that
a very
like V is the only one working towards something.
correct. I think. Well, I mean, the movie does a very, very good job of like creating the narrative that lands us to where the Grand Chancellor or Supreme Chancellor or whatever, how he gets into power and how people want it and all that kind of stuff.
Professor Broom.
Yeah,
Remember
and we know it's because of fears of what's happening overseas with America and all that kind of stuff that caused, and then the war coming over to Britain and all that kind of stuff that causes this kind of this world, and of course the pandemic, epidemic situation and the cure, which is very, very much like what gave the voting percentage like 97% in that graphic or whatever. I mean, it's basically showing us how fascism and dictatorship rises. And then once fascism and dictatorship rises, there is just two classes. There are the people in control and people under that control. And we see this best with Stephen Fry's character, I think.
What I would say is you're right that there is only two, but that's not how it works. The way it works is that you still need to present it like there's three.
Correct. It's an artificial.
Which this movie does not.
Yeah, and it doesn't do that very, very well, but it does it in one scene that I think is very, very interesting, and that's the scene where that's when Evie goes to meet with Stephen Fry after she escapes from the priest, that priest scene, which is traumatic, and he reveals his sexuality, the Quran, and all this kind of stuff, but that. In that same day where he's like, oh, I threw out the censored approved script, I shot this one instead and all this kind of stuff. And then he shows his privilege to be, and then his thinking that there's an artificial middle class in between there where he won't get affected. Like he's doing that right in front of her. He's like, well, yeah, I'm going to joke about all this stuff. I'm going to do all this kind of stuff. I'm going to disregard the approved censors, disregard everything. What's going to, like what he says with his agent is like, what's going to happen to me? This is the most watched show. You can't do anything to me. That privilege and entitlement really shines through in his.
But I don't think he thinks there's a third. He's saying to Evie, like, I'm even better than you. Like he thinks he's at the top with the Chancellor.
Correct.
So there's still just the two.
Yeah.
I think
that's why I say artificial third class. Artificial.
But this is what I'm saying. Even in the example you're giving, it's not that he thinks there's the Chancellor, then him, then Evie. If we're just using quick examples,
sure.
He thinks it's him, the Chancellor, then Evie.
Right.
Which isn't how fascism usually works.
Yes.
It's how capitalism works in terms of like, oh, I can be at the top. And then there's everyone else. But this movie isn't really interested in capitalism that way. No. And yes, he is using the capitalist terms of like, I'm the most watched thing. But this movie, if we're using your example, I feel like is more about fascism. And I think the way that works is if Stephen Fry thinks he's safe because he's part of that second tier as opposed to the third tier. Whereas that was more of a capitalism example of Yeah, there's just the haves and the have-nots.
Yep, for sure.
Which is fine. Maybe that is the point, is that movie was trying to introduce that bit of capitalism and how that's not going to really work out in this fascist society because he still gets taken out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think this is why I said there's a lot of good ideas. I don't know if it all comes together for me, because I feel like the fascism stuff is kind of like, like it's broad strokes, but you're missing a very important element of it. Yep. And then the other thing, and I think we talked about this when we were talking about the best comic book movies, was V for Vendetta, is I just don't think they did Evie justice. I feel like
really
she's led along a lot of the movie, and yes, I understand they're going to great pains to show you how this whole experience turns her into the new V.
Yes.
But even at the end of the movie, I don't feel like she gets to, even in Django, which is like a similar thing of like, it's Christoph Waltz and Jamie Foxx is learning along the way. Mm-hmm. You still get a whole segment where Jamie Foxx gets to show off everything he's learned. I don't feel like Evie ever gets to show off what she's learned. She's just like, and the fireworks that I didn't set up are going to go off now, and I get to say the lines V told me earlier, but it's nothing that she has. She literally is just waiting around for him at the end of the movie during like the big showdown. It's literally her just sitting on a bench and waiting. And I feel like it's a weird choice because ostensibly she's the lead, but she doesn't really affect anything. And more importantly, she does dumb things throughout most of the movie, like that priest scene where I'm like, what? Like, why are you trying to save this guy? What? Are you an idiot?
Well,
and I thought and I was like, wait, is she like tricking him? I'm like, no, she's genuinely not trying to trick him. She's trying to save this guy. What?
No, in that scene, I really genuinely thought she was trying to save herself and just trying to use the Archbishop to get through that communication. That's it. But I mean, like in a situation where I'm like, whatever that priest was, where you have where clearly he's going for a pedophilia, prostitution scenario. I'm like, what are the chances that you think this priest is actually going to help you?
I mean, it's stupid either way. What she's doing isn't smart. And then, I've thought like, okay, she's in this hole. They're gaslighting, or V is gaslighting her to think that she's having the exact same experience as he is, even though she's not.
Yes.
And I'm like, okay, so like if I'm writing this, she figures it out before he reveals it, and you can still have the same exchange where he talks her down. But why isn't she like? Why are we as the audience always one step ahead of her?
Yeah.
And it's just this weird thing where I'm like, I don't know, like that she got a fair shake in the movie. I feel like she's around for a lot of stuff, but she's not. Her decisions only hinder what's going on unless it's like already like laid out for her.
Well, yes, very much so. I mean, we know that. I don't think V ever really wanted to take Evie under her wing and all that kind of stuff. I don't think he was looking for that. He's consumed it entirely by rage. He's not looking for anything to humanize him or anything like that. He's just looking for his revenge. He just wants to do his thing on the 5th. He wants to blow up.
I think that's where he starts. I think the end of the movie makes it clear that that's even the scene I was just telling you is him being like, that's what I had before, was just the anger. But the only reason he's able to continue to operate is because he's like, I've committed myself to this idea of freeing the people. And Evie is 100% being taken under his wing so that she can continue on, because he's probably at the end of his ropes. But what I'm saying is she never gets to do anything like V does. She gets to say things he said. There's the visual of her being in the rain and being born in the rain versus him being born in the fire. But none of it is like her, like he's the one that escapes from jail. She just is like, he's just like, for her, it's just like, all right, I'm done gaslighting you now, I guess. Like, you never gave me up. Great. So like, she doesn't get to do anything. It's all this stuff where she's being led along.
I see.
And I feel like, why does she have so much time if she's literally just the sidekick? And less than a sidekick, because most sidekicks get to have this integral part in the win for the movie. And all she is there, she's just there for the explosions and like there to be with the cop to be like, oh, do you like music? And again, just say the same lines again. Like
Right.
she didn't do anything.
You're absolutely right. I think I never really looked at it that way. I just thought it was well, there's when I rewatched this movie, there was one thing that's really stood out to me that I was like, that's stupid. That's really, really stupid. Which is the fact that, okay, after that, V's training of Evie, if you want to call it that, the gaslighting training, abuse, torture, and all that kind of stuff, whether or not that was his intent to make her stronger or whatever it was, he still kind of releases her. And we don't know how much time there is between that release and November 5th. But you would have to suspect that the Sutter characters and the detectives would still be actively interested in finding her. You know what I mean? I
think is dumb that you just made me think about is that, like, it's not dumb. It just kind of speaks to my point is that he's so convinced that he's broken her in that he's like, yeah, you can leave. You're definitely not going to tell anyone about me. Like, it is never set up that she is her own person. She is an extension of him. And I'm just like, oh, like, why? Yeah. Why is that the take? Mm-hmm. That she's just this extent, like, so much so that he's like, yeah, you're free to leave. Like, I know nothing bad will happen to me if you leave. Even
I feel like
before that you were constantly screwing things up.
Yeah, I feel like if she had a bigger role toward the end, as opposed to blowing up the Parliament building, which at that point was irrelevant. It was completely irrelevant because
he'd already taken out all the people.
Chancellor's already dead. He's taken out all the people he wanted to take out. That guy that turns over the Chancellor kills him in that really epic final showdown. At that point, everything's been done already. The blowing up of the building is entirely symbolic, and of course, like, that's what he was saying. It's symbolic. It's all this kind of stuff. It's the start of a new era.
But it's something he started. He set it up. It's not she didn't do it.
Yeah, and like I like the reason why he was like, I can't be the one that pulls this thing because it's a decision made by the people. And I'm not one of them anymore because I'm too consumed by rage. I'm like, okay, that's kind of cool. But at the same time, her decision to pull the trigger to blow up Parliament is completely irrelevant towards everything.
And I only see that as she's just completing what he started. It's not, it never feels like a genuine, like, this is for the people moment. Right. Or this is me representing the people. She represents V at that point. Yeah. She's not representing the people.
Yeah. She just has enough.
They've done the work to show you she's just going to become V now. Yeah. Maybe a nicer one, but she's still V.
That would have been cool. It's just like if she launched it and all that kind of stuff, if there was an opportunity for her to do what V did and take over the emergency broadcast and be like, people of Britain, this is what's happened and all that kind of stuff. Tomorrow is a new day. We will fight this. We will, like, if she did some kind of speech and it ended like that, if there was voiceover of her doing
something,
that would be incredible, because now she becomes the legitimate symbol. It's like the idea of in The Dark Knight, where Batman is an illegitimate symbol of hope versus Harvey Dent as the DA is a legitimate symbol of hope.
Yes.
It's the idea of like that dichotomy is fantastic. And I really love that. V actually picked up on that. It's like, hey, I can't be a symbol of hope because look at all the shit that I've done. There's a lot of violence. I've done a lot of things to get to this point, and violence and bloodshed has to be done in order to get to this point. So it's too much rage to go into something new and hopeful. So really, if he wanted her to do anything significant, I agree with you. I really wish she would have had some sort of address or something that was more significant than pull this lever if you wanted to. That's it.
Which I don't think it ever registered for me that there was a choice for her. Like, it just seems like she's like so in on him, like to the point of like kissing his mask, like she's kissing him, that like, yeah, of course you're going to pull that lever because you're invested in what he did for you. You're not, that didn't really feel like, I see what you're trying to tell me now. I feel like she was just like, yeah, I really like V. Also, the fact that he calls himself V, I'm like, this movie really makes a big point that it's 5.
Yeah.
It's really funny that he just calls himself V.
I agree.
I agree.
What? The V thing is funny.
Isn't he smart? Like, what? It's like, call me V. I'm like, but it's a 5. It's a Roman numeral.
Yeah. That part of it's really, really fun. But I mean, it is what it is. V is really, really cool, especially when he goes into that. That part of the movie I think is one of the coolest parts, where he goes into that whole monologue where he's using only V words to describe who he is. That is by far one of the best.
I like all the stuff to do with V. I just think that like it's what I said, like a lot of good ideas that just don't really land for me the more I think about it, because I can say that V when he's on screen is fun and engaging, but it's like, but what is he doing with Evie? Once you start trying to connect them to like the greater theme of the movie, I'm like, I don't know. Like it seems like he needed less time, or to just be the only person in the movie, or like the only lead, and then it's more him and the cop. Yeah, and you can make Natalie Portman the cop. But
the cop part definitely had so much more going for it. Because that was where the cop really was. We learned we're along with the cop with so much more. I mean, we learn things the way the cop learns things. You know, the idea that
he's the one that's like, this is what's going to happen. This is the sequence of events, and it's like,
I love that.
Like, why is he getting this? Like,
why does he's
smart. Like, he knows what's going on here. Why is Evie always one step behind?
Yes. Here's another thing too. What I will say, the white thing, I'm just reading here on the Wikipedia page that the High Chancellor Adam Sutler, during his thing of rise to power, created political opponents that included immigrants, Jews, Muslims, atheists, homosexuals, and other undesirables that were imprisoned and executed in concentration camps. The British were not included, but were considered inferior. So the lack of diversity, to me, is now a little bit more justified, but even then disturbing.
As I said, I feel like, yes, that's all well and good. It's just missing that other part of like, if they successfully eradicated all those people, then the metaphor still doesn't quite work.
I agree with you. I agree. I'm just saying that they considered it, but it's a misstep. Fundamental. You're absolutely right. There needs to be people of color there. It needs to show.
Again, it doesn't have to be people of color. Like, I would like that, because I think that's how to make a more engaging film for everyone. But if the idea is you killed them all off, or you've got them all imprisoned, then there needs to at least be some acknowledgement of that from the people that they keep showing just living their lives and not thinking about it. Because the whole point is, these people need to be woken up to all the terrible things that are happening. But I feel like almost every time people are aware of what's happening, they're just not doing anything. And I feel like the way that fascism works is, like, if you're Trump, your base will always feel comfortable that nothing bad will happen to them. Like, that all they have to do is follow the rules of the cops.
I just have to wear a
because they're not acting like the black people or the other marginalized people that don't follow the rules and aren't doing it. Like, that's how that works. And like, there needed to be more of like a present enemy to the state than there is in this movie. This movie just seems like it's fascism, and I'm like, yeah, but like they're control, and yes, they're using parts of the media, and it's just like, so either it's that people just don't care at all, and then they get woken up to the bad things that are happening, or they do know, but they feel safe. But this movie is kind of just like, I don't know. They get it, but they're not doing anything about it.
Yeah, based on my personal experience in regards to these race-related issues, where, you know, or even other issues related to that, the mentality to me is always, it seems, I'm glad I'm not included in that. And then that's it. That's where Jacob Blake got shot 7 times in the back. I'm glad I'm not black, because that's probably never going to happen. Like, it's stuff like that, right? It's not like...
Yeah, which I feel like the movie is missing, because it's just shit happening to everyone, and it's like, okay.
Correct.
So then either they're all just like giving up, but it doesn't seem like that's the case, because they keep showing scenes where people are like, I don't think that's actually what happened. Like, I feel like they're lying on the news. Like, that's not what happened.
Yeah, I feel like it would have been more effective if there was a couple of shots during the roundups where specifically they were targeting people of color. on the streets and all that kind of stuff, to be like, and then white people standing by watching it, watching, like, to me it would be so powerful. For example, if there was a begging of some man, woman, or child doing something like a grocery store thing, and then having everyone just watch and not do anything about it.
Yeah,
you know?
Or if they, again, I don't know why I'm trying to give this movie like leeway, but like, again, if you don't want to deal with race, they seem to have been flirting with the idea of they really didn't like gay people, so you can
they were
that be the thing.
Definitely had that for sure. Yeah,
but I'm saying, like, that, as I said, it seems like by the time we're watching the movie, they're done with that phase. But it just seems like there needed to always be that thing that makes people feel safe because they are not what is being attacked.
Mm-hmm.
It could have been gay people. You can cast all the white people you want for that. Yeah. It's just the same scene you're talking about, where like someone is taken away in a grocery store and everyone's like, what the hell's going on? And then it's revealed they're gay. That makes them be like, oh, okay, yeah, not me then. I don't have to worry about that.
Exactly. It was, and that's, I guess, what the movie is basically, and a lot of what we're dealing with these race issues and stuff like that, like gay, LGBT rights and everything like that, has risen dramatically, much faster than race rights and all that kind of stuff in politics, primarily because white people can be gay too. So it's just the idea of like, hey, there's more movement in that regard because of this kind of thing, and this movie just it grazes on it. But it tries to do that more with the LGBTQ stuff, to be like, hey, white people, you're a part of this too, because if you're gay, this could be happening to you or something like that, right? It's absolutely crazy, and just like the idea of like, absolutely crazy.
So I guess it's a pretty straightforward story, right? Like, Natalie Portman is I get it. This time they're tracking the whole, like, she feels like she's a nobody. She feels like she's too weak because she let her parents get taken away when she was a little kid.
Yep.
And so the events of this movie builds her up to the point where, when it happens again with Stephen Fry getting taken away in front of her, she tries to do something, I guess. I don't even remember now. But like, she gets up, she doesn't just whimper under the bed. And then ultimately she's hardened by the experience that happens with V. But again, I still feel like that was like a weird like training wheels thing, because she's not really ever in danger. Like, I'm not saying it wasn't uncomfortable and traumatizing, but it's like, it's I don't know what they're trying to get at then, because it's like he's gaslighting her, and it's like,
it's
he's the one doing this to her. Like, it's not even that like he saves her from it. It's like he completely created this environment for her to be traumatized in.
I think one of the biggest things about that scene was just like, the only thing that would have made sense is that, hey, I have to recapture you for your own protection so you don't get captured by all this kind of stuff and keep you here, and this is the way I'm going to justify keeping you here and making you not question or not try to leave or not doing something stupid again, is that I have to convince you of this, which is,
or just be like, you're my captive, but I'm going to teach you things that make you not as scared as before, and don't gaslight her.
I agree. Don't gaslight people.
Don't you could just have him.
Nothing worst.
Yeah, it's just weird. I don't like. I like the look of the movie. I like a lot of the V stuff, but, and I'm not like, I don't like, I'm not gonna get into, I don't think this is the best Natalie Portman accent or whatever. That's immaterial to me. The movie just doesn't work for me because of, or doesn't work as well as I think it works for others, because it's kind of half-heartedly dealing with these issues,
right?
And then yes, people can be like, well, it's just a comic book movie. Okay, great, whatever.
Right.
But like, so much time is dedicated to these things that I'm forced to then like be like, but that's not how this would work, or this seems weird, or like, that's the only reason I'm bringing it up, is because the movie wants to engage in these ideas. I'm not trying to be like, oh, this isn't political science, that's not how it works. It's like, I mean, you're forcing me to like engage with this stuff, so I'm going to engage with it.
Yeah.
And then yeah, the same thing with Evie. You're forcing me to engage with this character, and I feel like we saw a big long runway, and then we never got to see her take off.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. I never really thought of Evie's character as getting shafted, but I certainly do now. The thing that works really, really well for me in this movie is, of course, the relevancy of today's current social climate.
Yeah, that works.
And what the path we're leading down, and the current trajectory that our politics are currently doing, that are playing out exactly like what this movie is doing. That's what works really, really well for me. The race stuff was stuff that I've always, I wouldn't say ignored, but to me, the way the movie poses why there's no race in there has always been sufficient to me, because I'm just like, yeah, I can see why that would be the case with the xenophobia that currently already exists in London. And like,
isn't that something you had to read up on? Like, I don't feel like that's inherent.
No, but that's something I made a logical jump in my head
Yeah.
and then it confirmed here. Because the thing is, whenever I see this kind of stuff happen, it's always like, oh, let's get rid of the immigrants first. Let's get rid of the people of color. Let's get rid of anyone that doesn't look like us, and we'll feel safe. And that's largely what
yeah.
I see.
I mean, I would say it's round them up.
Yes, round them up for sure.
Yeah, because if you completely eradicate them, then someone has to be next.
Yes, which is
I feel like that's the step this movie missed.
Well, yes,
that fine. They eradicated all the people who look different.
Yes,
but someone needs to be next.
Yeah, the people that were next were the LGBTQ people. That was it.
But they were already part of. That's what I'm saying. They were already part of that first wave that the movie showed. Like the fact that like
I don't know if it was the first wave or the second wave or whatever it was, but
it's irrelevant what wave it is.
It is
the point is that by the time we are watching the movie in that present day, that wave has already gone, because we can see Evie reading the letter about the woman who had gay things, and you're saying there was flashbacks of the black gay person. So what I'm saying is, who's next? Like, it can't just be that like everyone's just okay now, or not everyone's okay, but everyone just falls in line now.
Yeah,
because the movie isn't saying that everyone has fallen in line. The movie is just saying that people aren't mad enough to do something.
Yes.
I feel like the reason people don't get mad enough is because they know, even if it's subconsciously, that won't affect me. It's what you said. It sucks for Jacob Blake or George Floyd, but I mean, that would never happen to me. And there is very real videos you can watch where white people are getting hassled by the cops and like, I'm not even black. Like it's just this tacit understanding of like, why are you doing this to me? I'm not the enemy. And that's what I'm saying is,
you're breaking the movie or something like that.
The movie is so concerned with how fascists really see their people as the enemy, and I'm like, yeah, I get that, but the reason they can get away with it or can keep going is because they create a different enemy for the people to feel like, oh, at least I'm not them. And that's what, and I feel like that is missed in the movie. So it doesn't need to be people of color. It doesn't need to even be gay people, but there needs to be that third element, even if it's fictitious. Then I think that's what the movie was missing.
See, I don't know if I will fully agree with that, because to me the LGBTQ stuff was so powerful, and it's right, and I think maybe that would have been because I was watching it with someone that is a part of the LGBTQ.
So what I would say is, yes, that is powerful stuff. She reads it, you feel bad, but now step away from that and look at the movie. What about the movie 100%. Is telling you that that's who everyone agrees is because if you're Stephen Fry and you can just hide it, that's fine. But like, there's no explicit thing saying they are hunting after them, and there's smear campaigns against them. Everyone just seems to be like, oh, it's just life. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, the same way Hitler had Jewish people, the same way Trump has, well, he started off with Mexicans.
Yeah,
there was none of that. That's what I'm saying. It's not an implicit thing. So yes, you can infer gay
Mhm.
people are targeted because of the clues in the movie. What I'm saying is that government is missing the element where they have created an enemy, and the enemy is visible and everyone knows what the enemy looks like, because, as we said, that's what keeps them safe, or that's what gives them the false sense of safety, is that they know who the enemy is, they know how to identify it, and they are not that.
Right. Yeah. It's a difficult discussion because being LGBTQ doesn't give you any physical identifiers. So in that scene where they're doing the roundups with the woman, the actress that wrote Diary,
Mhm.
you hear her discussing how her partner Ruth was snatched while taking groceries, and visually not. I mean, aside from that, there's no visual way to confirm sexuality.
Mhm.
There's nothing about her that would that anyone would deem outside the normal realm of what their society was dictating as the expectation of appearance, so to speak.
Okay,
There's
so
nothing.
what I would say is the point is,
Mhm.
realistically what's happening is you're getting rid of people who are causing change.
Yes,
So they can take
100%.
anyone they want, as long as, again, using the world of that the movie is created, they can do whatever they want, as long as the news then says, turns out this person was a homosexual. That's what makes people feel safe. So you don't need a visual. It's just everyone understands we're coming after gay people. And
And
so then
you're,
anyone who does anything wrong, they don't need to actually be gay. It's
yeah.
just, if they've done something wrong, the chancellor sees them as a threat. You can
Mhm.
get rid of them, and you
Yep.
can be like, it's because they were exhibiting homosexual or
Yeah.
tendencies or whatever.
Yeah. And in this and you said something very, very, very relevant, is just the idea of like, if it challenges change.
Yes.
The idea of Stephen Fry's character is exactly that. He
Exactly.
is a very gay person. Now not openly gay in this story.
No, he's not openly gay in the movie. No.
He's definitely not openly gay, but he does things to cover it up, and that's why he gets by. It's a very, very much like when he's talking about Evie, he's like, oh, you see, a man of my like position
Means,
is
yeah.
expected to entertain young women and all that kind of stuff, and he's basically letting her into the lie and being like, I am gay, I just can't let anyone know, and all that kind of stuff. I'm just hiding it very, very well. And he thought that was enough, but the fact that he disrupted change through his going off the censor approved script.
So this is what I'm saying. The movie needed to focus more on stuff like that.
Yes.
Because again, it's a movie focused on fascism and what that could look like. But unless you're giving me examples like the Stephen Fry one, I don't understand why everyone is so docile.
Yeah. It's a very,
you need to just be like, oh, everyone's just beaten down and no one cares anymore, and the presence of V brings that back out in people.
Mhm.
But they're in this mid ground that I'm like, that only works if everyone is like on board with like, well, yeah, just don't be gay and nothing bad will happen to you.
Yeah.
If that's where they want to go, because yes, the movie does lean into the LGBTQ community a bit more than anything else.
Yes.
And now I want to take time from being smart about this movie. I genuinely don't understand this, and I'm sure it's very obvious. Why does Stephen Fry make the same breakfast that V makes for Evie? Like, are they connected somehow?
Honestly, I just think it's a very, very popular UK thing. It's a very popular.
It is popular, but it's weird that the movie calls it out.
No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I think,
is this a thing? Like, is this like, because I was like, wait, is this part of the con? Like, even this time watching it, I've seen it like 4 or 5 times. I was like, wait, is this part of the con too? That he's like pretending like Stephen Fry is there? And I'm like, no, that was really Stephen Fry, because he just gets killed there. Like, that's not part of V's thing. But I feel like I must have missed some line of dialogue or something. That why was that interesting? Or is that just supposed to signify someone she can trust if they make that breakfast?
Honestly, that as a mechanism, as a writing mechanism, that to me, I never bought into it more than what it was. To me, it was just like, oh, this is English comfort food, which it is. And I personally love it. And it was just something that's just like, oh, here you go, and everything like that. But you're absolutely, like, I think it was a weird thing to focus on. It absolutely was, given the context of everything else that they're trying to set up. It's a very, very weird connection kind of thing, because it could have been even like if they were trying to actually screw around with the identity of V,
Yeah.
it could have been a little bit more interesting because Evie could have been like, "Is this butter?" Like she makes a big point of saying like, "You have butter?" Like,
Yeah. She's like, this is the exact same thing he made for me.
yeah. Like if they want to fuck around, but there was no, I think, actual
No follow-up.
desire to be
No.
like, this is who V is. Like, there's no.
Other than like he's that person that was in that jail that broke
Yeah,
out and blew
it wasn't an
everything up
idea
with
of
that
like
stat.
there's a secret identity. There's no such thing as, oh, here's a secret identity that we have to
Yeah,
make.
there's no Bruce Wayne to his
Exactly.
Batman. It's just he is V.
Yeah, no,
Whoever that was died in the fire, and now he is V. The
Yeah.
same way I feel like whoever Evie was before is no longer, because she has grown through the transformative things of Reign into whatever she is at the end of the movie.
Right. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. That device has never really connected with me, but they make such a big emphasis on focusing on it. I don't get it.
Yeah, I didn't get it, but
yeah.
I'm also willing to say that is an element that was probably by the time I checked out of the movie.
Yeah, no, I certainly love this movie quite a bit, just because of just how well everything gets set up, from the understanding of propaganda and how it's done, how it's spun and all that kind of stuff, like the Bailey building blowing up. It's like, oh yeah, we were planning to do this, but it was the crew that decided to have a little bit of fun. It was the idea, like it, and then hearing like coworkers being like, that's bullshit. Can you believe this bullshit? I saw it blow up. It did not get demolished and all that kind of stuff. It's really, really interesting to see that side of things, to be like, okay, here's propaganda, here's what people are pushing. One side of it being like, what are you talking about? The government would never lie to us. And then another side of it being like, what the fuck? They're definitely lying to us. That to me was really, really cool. But of course, we didn't get enough of that because the film's not really interested in exploring what the fascism does in the more everyday situation and how oppressed everyone actually is.
See, I would disagree. The whole point, the movie only works if that's what the movie is about.
Right. Sorry, what?
I disagree that the movie's not interested in that idea of how fascism affects every day, because that's the whole point. The whole the whole swing into the third act is because an everyday girl gets shot. Right. This is what the movie is hoping you buy into. It's only really interested in that.
Yeah, I guess
that's the emotional.
I guess my comment is more like, I don't get to visually see it from how oppressive everything is, aside from like the lockdown, like
as I said, I think you're coming to terms with what I've already been voicing from up top.
Definitely.
It's a movie. It is a movie that has good ideas.
Yes.
But the execution isn't quite sturdy enough.
It does
for it to be, yeah, because it's definitely trying to be smarter than just an action movie.
Yes.
And so at that point, I'm like, well, it's not quite landing for me. And I'm sure there's people who are able, and I am 100% saying it doesn't land for me because of how white the cast is. Like it's throwing me off in movies now.
That's fair.
Especially as we've talked about these other movies. I feel like there's not even Superman in 1978 went a whole movie without a black person speaking. I don't know that we've actually watched too many movies without black people having a speaking line or being just a part of it. It's even in the Spider-Man movies we watched.
Yeah, the Raimi stuff.
The Raimi stuff. There's a lot of black people just within the city, like the way the city's put together, in addition to characters who speak who are black. But like this movie really stuck out because I was like, okay, fine, great. The explanation is they got rid of all of them. Mm-hmm. But I think what is still missing is the obviously marginalized group. It's a weird thing to omit, that there is no obviously marginalized group, because that is how all of this works. That is the chess game that is being played. It's not a one-to-one, like we just control you. Unless they're saying this is all so far out into the future that's easy. But again, even when you talk about it, people aren't just all controlled. People aren't like, oh, better not think that. or else. People are skeptical in the movie, and
Well,
they
yeah.
show that at different levels of people being skeptical. So it still begs the question: then why is everyone so comfortable?
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
so that's kind of what I'm getting at, is that even if you, and I will continue to say it, you don't have to have it be that there are people of color in the movie, even though you have stated there is one. I just feel like it is missing a very crucial element for this metaphor, this theme to fully land.
I agree. I think that there are, with the evidence you put in front of me today, that has caused me to re-examine it. And that is genuinely because I don't have an inner dialogue, so I have to work things out vocally.
Mhm.
So yeah, I absolutely agree with you that there's a lot of really, really, really smart and beautiful ideas in this.
Mhm.
It does not come together very, very well in the film format, because there are certain things that basically I feel like one of the biggest things is like we're seeing fascism through the eyes of white people. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
just like and I think that's why we're missing that group, that very identifiable group that you keep talking about.
Because even in like a book or a movie like 1984, it's people who have free thought. Like
Yes.
it is set. You know what they're trying to accomplish.
Mhm.
Of like, we don't want people to be free thinkers because that's going to lead to change.
Yeah.
This movie does not have a set group like that, and I think that not only is it fascism through the eyes of a white person, it's a fascism through the eyes of someone who doesn't fully understand what is
Yes,
happening
I agree.
with a fascist government.
I agree. That's why there was so much display, because every time the movie made a point of showing you the people that were watching the broadcasts, so whether it be the propaganda from Sutter or the broadcast from V or any of those things, it's what it sells to me is complacency, that they're comfortable, that there's nothing
Yes.
wrong, that they're like, okay, cool, like, yeah, the people are just going to randomly drop by and like pick up our conversations and all that kind of stuff. They're going to drive vans at just eavesdrop, but we're safe because of everything that this government's created and all that kind of stuff. I think there's a big question about, and this is very, very interesting to me, seeing Chinese politics and North American politics play out, is the idea of perception of safety and how safety is promoted by governments and large officials and all that kind of stuff versus in this fascism, communistic kind of political, um, I guess, powerhouses in regards to how the systems work. The idea of safety in those regards is like, no, the government's going to protect you. We're going to control everything. We're going to treat you like children. That's how we're going to make you feel safe, right? It's this really, really crazy thing. We're just stripping away all these rights for the freedom, for the sake of safety, and we've seen that happen also in North America, and the uprising and the vocal protest against it versus in kind of Chinese politics and all that kind of stuff. You have vocal protests, and it's not the greatest example because the Chinese propaganda machine is fucking very, very real. But you don't. It's very, very interesting to see how that's explored within this population too.
Well, yeah. I mean, even if you wanted to do like what, I still think it's so weird when people say it, but like if you wanted to do like an Antifa thing, like, because even I feel like that's what you're touching on with Chinese, like there are people who are out in the streets like protesting, and there was none of that in this movie. And I
Correct.
feel like that is a very easy way to like visualize that idea of like, well,
Yes.
those are the idiots that are trying to change the system. And
Yeah.
because that's what this movie is trying to get at, is these people are complacent because they feel safe. And I'm like, but why? And also, even if you don't want to get into why, like if you're constantly showing me people questioning things, then I don't understand this. And yeah, in real life, I'm sure that happens, but we go to the movies for a bit, especially a movie like this, for escapism. You kind of have to, like, for lack of a better term, dumb things down to be like,
Yeah.
Either it is they just have given up because they're like, whatever, the government will take care of us. And I know I keep saying it, and then V comes along and people start being like, wait a minute, yeah, like I think But that's not what the movie is. The movie is like there already are people doubting it,
Mhm.
and it's like, well, then why isn't anyone joining in on the V stuff?
Yeah, that's the thing that's frustrating to
And
me.
because yeah, then you could have like an Antifa thing, which I'm like, why don't people just say anti-fascist? Like it's very easy to be anti-fascist. Hopefully everyone is, but like it's like you can have the people that are like
Yeah.
out there protesting what the and fine if the movie wants to be like, oh, people just dismiss them as crackpots. They're like, well, yeah, okay, the government's trying to get rid of like that makes more sense to me than just like people question it. But
Yeah.
that's that.
Yeah, show me that there are people protesting. Show me those people getting bagged and all that kind of stuff.
And then people are like, so then it's like, well, as a safety or like as a coping mechanism, I will just choose to believe that like
Yeah.
nothing bad is happening.
Yeah,
I will ignore
like
it that
have
way.
a parent be like to their have a parent be like, see, that's why we stay like this.
Mhm.
Like, you know, like those kind of things. Like that's why we stay complacent, because we won't be that people if we just like follow the
Yes.
rules, which are completely unethical and immoral.
Yes.
But it's like we will have this as long as we live by their rules, which is oppression. It's 100% oppression, right? Fall in line is basically what it is.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, I think the movie would have been more effective if there was a resistance group that V inspired out of the blowing up of Bailey. I think that's what's missing out of this,
Mhm.
in the sense where it gives you that free thought group. Who are the people that are aligning with V, his philosophies and all that kind of stuff, and being like, we do need change. We need our governments pushing us back. We needed some sort of rebel group. We needed some kind of ideology, and that would have been, I think, a good solution too, because it would have been like, okay, V's final showdown, he's dead now, Evie has to lead the new resistance group. Like
Mhm.
that would have been cool. That would have been so cool. I would have loved that.
I
But
mean,
at the same time,
anything that gives
yeah,
Evie something to do that makes you feel like, oh, that's something she thought of.
correct. But at the same time too, the resistance group wouldn't technically make that much um, sense, because it's just like, okay, well, V actually effectively took out everyone except for the investigator cop guy that was associated with the chancellor and all that. So he just basically cleaned house. So it's just like, well, whether or not a resistance group needs to exist after someone's cleaned house is a totally different thing, right? So but that would have given Evie something to do.
You don't need to make it seem like this group is going to last past the events of this movie. It
That's
just
correct.
needs to be something happen. And I'm sure I can hear people being like, they did deal with that because there's very clear dialogue about Chancellor being like, I want to get rid of anyone wearing that mask or
Right.
whatever. But again, I can't argue that these aren't good ideas. It's
Yes.
stuff that is touched on. I'm saying for me that what would make it a better movie is if they engaged a bit more in that stuff. So yes, there is dialogue. I can remember it. I can see it in my head of the government then being like, okay, now, well, the enemy now is anyone who sides with V. But it's a bit late in the movie. And also I feel like it's not like no one's doing anything other than wearing the mask. It's not like they're like, oh, now people are like acting out and like trying to.
Yeah, they're not showing. Well, I mean, they did show the riots.
Well, the riots happened because that little girl got shot, and
Yeah.
it's like, yes, that all makes sense. But what I'm saying is, what makes these riots that we're living through right now palpable is that it's an element of like, oh, now other people are on board with what other people have been saying for centuries, almost. Like it just, it's different. It's like there's just that misunderstanding of like there's always a level of people being like, this is happening, and fascists being able to create two realities of, hey, watch out for those people who are saying this stuff that things need to change, while also being like, those idiots over there, like, you don't want to be like those idiots, but also like they're powerful enough to topple us and we need to stop it.
Yeah.
It's that is what this movie was missing, is that
it needs that
is how you get the complacency. Like it creates two things. It creates the complacency of people that are just like, well, yeah, whatever, I don't have to deal with that. And then it creates the people who are actively like, yeah, fuck those people. Like, let's get rid of them. That's how it works.
And you're absolutely right. That the lack of that group is what really suffers in this movie, because it gives Evie something to do. It gives her a purpose. It's just like the idea of like, oh, you can leave now, but you're going to sit around in front of a TV for months, is what I'm assuming.
Yeah, I don't even know what she did. I just feel like
There's just
so weird.
Yeah, the moment she gets released, you see a shot of her watching some stuff on a TV and then just eating. And then you just start to think to yourself, well, who's going to rent to you? Where are you staying? What's going on? You think of all those logistical things that you're just like, the government must still want you, right? You're still wanted. It's been within a year. You're still on the wanted list. You haven't gone.
Again, I feel like the movie does say all those things, but I'm like, I never really got the sense that people cared. They were just like, it's like, oh, it's the person that knew. I'm saying the movie does cover its bases. There is definite dialogue concerning we need to get her. She's the one that's made contact with V. But like, there's never really any urgency around that. Like, I never feel like, oh man, they're really closing in on her.
You're absolutely right, because the detective, during that whole time, after he gets tricked, so to speak, by V posing as Rookwood, in that scene, he sends he gets angry, and that thing is like, oh, it's all a lie, it was all this, and all, I ate it up like a piece of shit and all that kind of stuff. And then he's like, well, what are we going to do? He's like, well, what we should have been doing the whole time is finding him. And I'm like, yeah, why are how has the chancellor not come down on you for not having the results yet? I mean, like, he even says like, oh, arrest him. And I was like, I don't want arrest, I want results. And I was just like, how is this guy not getting shit on the same way that Creedy's getting shit on? You know what I mean? Like, the chancellor was just like the whole time is like, if we don't catch him, Creedy, this is all on you. And I'm like, what about the investigator? And then the other thing too was like, did that investigator seem weird to you? In the sense where every other person in that meeting room with the giant head, that wall of his face yelling at everyone about what they need to be doing and all that kind of stuff. It seems so weird to me that he was the lowest ranking person there. He just seemed like he had an everyday job, but he was still included in those meetings. It was really
true. I don't have anything for that, but you're right. It is
like
interesting that he was included in those.
Yeah, it was everything about was odd, because like you understand why every other character was there. It's like, okay, you're involved with the St. Mary's thing. We have to keep you here. All this war crime stuff. We had to keep you here to keep you shut up, or whatever it is. Like, you understand why all those people are there. You don't understand why the investigator is there whatsoever, because you're just like, you have an everyday job.
And full disclosure, I kind of check out during those scenes.
That's fair.
So,
yeah.
I specifically, it's not something I thought of until you mentioned it, but it is a weird inclusion on that.
Yeah, it's a
boardroom scenes. I know they're not a boardroom, but
the war room.
The war room, yeah, that's a better way of putting it. Yeah, the war room scenes kind of like, I'm kind of like, yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, I get it.
It's very, very effective visually, but yeah, this I think one of the biggest things is I think the most interesting thing in this movie, and it doesn't go into why America's at war. I think that's a really, really cool thing that developed out of this. We understand, like, they tell us the story of like America's war is getting under control, it's spilled over here and all this kind of stuff, and in order to protect us, we closed off our borders, we did this, we were xenophobic, all this kind of stuff. I don't know if the graphic novel goes into this or if it's mentioned or anything like that, but the idea of like, it's really, really, really interesting to me to see how, especially now with the riots, borders closed and all that kind of stuff, is just how this is playing out, and how many countries have closed off America from a travel perspective. But it's all these different things. You're just like, there's a lot of similarities here. It's very interesting.
Yeah, it's great, and I think maybe that is also why I'm like, even more now watching it, it's like we're living elements of this already. So it's like, oh, it would be like if I don't know, like any major event in your life, they made a movie out of it, and you're just like, well, that's not how that happened. Like, you're fundamentally changing things. Like, that's how I feel, because we're so close to these ideas now,
Yeah.
like fascism, like
Mhm.
having people actually out in the street go up against like military, like
Mhm.
we're living it. So it's
Yeah.
kind of like, okay, like it feels like in 2006, I'm sure like a time of relative rest for people. Maybe it's
Yes.
like, holy shit, imagine if that happened, even though there's probably footage of stuff that's happened before.
Yeah.
it's it's just more we're watching this while it's happening in real time.
Yeah, we're watching
And
it
so
live
it
now.
feels kind of like, this isn't really getting at what actually happens in these situations.
Mhm.
This seems kind of like, it just seems like someone who doesn't quite understand what's happening. And again, that's not on the movie because the
Mhm.
movie was made when it was made. I'm
Mhm.
just saying that might be also part of the disconnect for me, is that I'm watching people riot because of a
Yeah.
death,
Yeah.
but I also know the context and the history of that death versus who is now joining in the fight.
Yes.
And it feels so now what I'm saying is real life seems more dramatic and intense than this movie in
Yes.
comparison, because this movie is kind of like, well, yeah, this nice little town. And that's the other thing, they make it seem like it's just all this one little town. And I
Mhm.
know England is smaller than the States or Canada,
Mhm.
but it's like, it doesn't even feel as wide reaching, because it's like it's the same little kid we've been watching all movie. We used to
Yeah,
kind of like
they
three
continue.
or
They always
four.
focus on London. Like they always talk about London. They're not going anywhere else. So it's like
But what
it's
I'm saying is, even in a city, is like, I feel like it's a pretty densely populated city.
very much so.
So for me to be like, oh yeah, that like one of 20 people I've seen all movie got killed, and the
Yeah,
same people just join in, it's kind of like, yeah,
it
but
makes me less
imagine if you had that other thing of like the people who have been complaining or
Yeah.
were under attack and no one cared, and
Uh-huh.
now these people are coming to it solidifies your idea better than this
Yep.
movie does, and we're also watching it happen in real time.
I agree. I agree. There's something definitely now that because there's so much of this that resembles reality or reality resembling this, however you want to take it,
Mm-hmm.
but the clear lack of that group, like in our society right now, it could be argued that that group right now is Black Lives Matter. Is the idea of like
They're definitely being vilified. Yeah,
they're being vilified as fuck. It's all these crazy things like that. I agree is why this movie right now. I still love this movie, but this movie, given the course of our current history, is missing. It allows us to see that it's missing a lot more things.
Mm-hmm.
And that maybe a good thing, maybe it's a bad thing, maybe it was good that it was so naive, maybe it was bad, like, you know what I mean? But
Yeah. No, I'm not trying to say, like, I'm saying the movie doesn't work for me for that reason. I'm not saying that
Yeah.
that makes it fundamentally a bad movie.
No. I get what you're saying. It's just that because we're seeing everything unfold right now.
Mm-hmm.
This movie arguably is just maybe 10 years away, if and it's a very near future. So it's hard.
I guess what I'm saying is I don't think it's a future. I think we're living it.
Well, that's what I mean. It is our future. It's our very near future.
No, what I'm saying is it's our present.
Okay, I think there's different degrees of what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is
You don't think that the government spin things?
No, they do. They 100% do. What I'm saying.
You don't think that they attack specific people and
they
then
do.
send the army out into the streets?
They absolutely do. I'm not saying. What I'm saying is to the point where the society is content. That's
then I think you're talking to the wrong people.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. But you're right.
We are living this movie.
Yeah,
so
we are living this
no,
movie.
there is no V that's setting off bombs in things.
Not that we know of yet.
Well, I'm saying V took credit, or at least was like pictured. What I'm saying is, to the extent that this movie could be real, it is a very real reality for us.
It's very real, just without the superhero elements of everything.
Yes.
Yep.
Because there are a lot of people that are perfectly fine with how things are going.
Yes, there are. Yes, many people. Unfortunate, and that's where our suffering comes from.
Yes.
So
that's what I'm saying. I don't think this is like a near future type thing. This is we are already living it, and that's why it doesn't work quite as well for me, because
Yeah.
I'm kind of like, oh, all right. I mean, I guess that's one way of looking at how these things play out.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it's no, you're absolutely right there. We are living this right now, and that's the scariest part.
Well, that was uplifting. do you wanna rate this movie?
I'm still giving this an 8. I really enjoy this movie for
Yeah.
all the issues that have come up within this conversation. I still really enjoy this movie.
I'm giving it a 7.
Cool.
It's got some great ideas. I don't feel like it fully comes together for me. It probably would be lower because I feel like Evie is such an issue for me. Like how little
I never really thought about it,
she gets to do,
but I do now.
and but I like the V stuff, so that brings it back up to a 7.
Yeah, the V stuff and then the inspector stuff is really
He's
good.
like a non-entity to me, but yes, I can see how people like the inspector.
I love the
do not
inspector.
interact with like it. Like as soon as he's on screen, it's nothing he can do about it. I don't like. It's just like I don't care.
Yep,
It's one too many people. Like because
I agree.
ostensibly that should just be the Evie stuff, or make Evie a cop.
Yeah,
it's too much.
Personally, I feel that would be very, very interesting if Evie was actually a cop.
Yeah, she doesn't need to be part of like the news. I guess I get that. That's what gives me the moment with Stephen Fry. But I'm like, she could still just go over to Stephen Fry. I don't know, man. I just feel like it's too much. I don't need him and Evie.
Well, I mean, it could be the idea that maybe she was like a security personnel for Stephen Fry or whatever it was. But it's just like the idea of like her being a part of the law enforcement adds another element of like her world shattering and all that kind of her character growth. It really does.
Like breaking from the system that's actively like, yeah. Anyway,
it's true, and it's also like her hating. Like I would have loved that idea so much more because it would be her hating herself for participating in the government that actively killed and took away her family. But her being like, this is the complacency I have because it's just like, what am I supposed to do? Like I can do this. Or I could go homeless. It's those kind of things. Or like the moment she's kind of presented with all these different truths and she's actively like getting the facts and the evidence and not the official person on the lead. Like that would have been really, really cool. I agree 100% because her character definitely gets shafted here.
Yep.
You've helped me definitely realize that for sure.
Well, at least you gave it an 8 and I gave it a 7. I feel like that's very generous.
Yeah, it is very generous. And a lot of the reason why is because
I understand what's good about the movie. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, Hugo Weaving being able to evoke emotion in that mask through his physical performance and his.
It's a great performance.
It's a great performance by Hugo Weaving. It's fantastic. It's so good.
All right.
Yep.
Well, we said all that to say this. If you enjoyed this podcast, please head on over to thatshelf.com. As Ben mentioned, we're part of the That Shelf Podcast Network. There's other great podcasts like Bad Gay Movies, Black Hole Films, Changing Reels, Composers, No Budget Nightmares, What a Great Theme Song, and more. So head over there. You can find us there in those podcasts. You can also go to tdfeverything.com/spoiledrotten, where you'll find the backlog of our episodes. They're not behind a paywall. They're just on a different site. You can reach out to us on Twitter at TDFSpoiled. Our email is spoiledpodcast@gmail.com. Ben and I have social media tags, but you'll find those all at the places I've told you. So yeah, please do that. Connect with us, but also connect with the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Radio Public. All of the good ones and some of the ones I don't even remember. You can rate, review, subscribe, and share with your friends. Hooray!
Yeah.
Anything else?
No, I think we've got it.
Excellent.
Yeah, check out those other podcasts. They're really, really great stuff.
Yep. All right, then. Bye-bye.
All right, everyone. Stay safe out there.
Mm-hmm.
This has been a TDF Everything production, brah.